to finish up the demos on the backside before we're done. All right, my name is Bo Duarte, and I'm a technology development manager here in Austin with BAE Systems. And we are proud to welcome you all to our second event that's part of our Defense Innovation at Startup Speed series as we get the slides going. And the objectives of our series are threefold. We want to talk to you and educate you a little bit about some pretty cool technologies that BAE Systems is developing, particularly in the realm of defense innovation. We want to highlight some of the work of some small companies that are here either in Austin or in the Texas area that they might have some commercial applications, but they definitely have some great potential in the military market. And then the last thing we want to do is just help develop the Austin innovation ecosystem. We've got folks here from commercial sector, from the government, from bigs, from smalls, and we just want to increase dialogue on a topic of interest, and today that's AR/VR. So just a quick check of hands, a number of folks from small companies in the audience. All right, big companies in the audience. All right, government, so municipal, Army, Navy, Air Force. Let's see, that's probably the major sectors. Let's see, a number of folks, Army background. Not me, I'm Navy. Woohoo! Let's see, Air Force. A couple of Zoomies out there, and Marines. Yeah, all righty. Well, like I said, we have some pretty neat gear here today, and our focus area tonight is AR/VR. There's a lot of solutions out there in the gaming industry, some pretty cool products that have a lot of commercial application. And I would say from a DoD standpoint, the customers are really just getting their minds wrapped around what are the potentials for AR/VR. Training, that seems pretty self-explanatory. Maybe some simulation. Yep, that's easy. Manufacturing, production, but the capabilities to augment true military performance, whether it's a ground soldier, whether it's an operator in the cockpit of an aircraft, it's kind of up to the imagination. And some of the technologies you'll hear from tonight and you'll see here tonight might have some really good applications with enough thought and experimentation. So the game plan tonight is we'll have some brief presentations from a few companies, just so on the backside you have the opportunity to go and see and feel and touch what they do. Then we'll have a short panel that's got representatives from not only the Navy as well as the Air Force, and we've got an individual from the kind of gaming academic world too. And so we'll have some brief discussion, some Q&A, and then we'll go back to some of these demonstrations if you hadn't had a chance to see some of the great kit that's here. So just kind of around the horn, over here in this station, we've got some folks from Frontline that are demoing RealWear. So it's a wearable, kind of like a tablet, voice activated. They've got some applications for training and calling up some documents. Actually, the sky is kind of the limit. So that's a good wearable commercial product that they're doing some interesting things with. So take a look at that. Over here we've got Hook Bang here at Austin, Texas on the 6th floor. And they've got, since 2012, pretty deep history of augmented reality, some artificial intelligence, some very smart mapping and projections for, in this case, they've got a piece of gear that you can train on. You can have different switch settings, and it's just a different way of making that manual come to life. So please take a look at what they have, and they target tablets or phones or other hardware to host their platform. In the backside over there is BAE Systems. We've got a group from New Hampshire that's here, and that's Keelan over there. He has, just using a simple HoloLens, he's digitized a control room for a ferry customer in San Francisco to show a hybrid electric drive. And so you can kind of walk around and see what the room looks like, obvious training or maintenance, repair type applications. And he's got another little BAE demo in the back. And then, let's see, over here, we've got quantum interface. If you want to look, we've got a wearable VR Oculus application, and these guys are pretty slick, also out of Austin here, that can show nested menus and video with audio, and different files that can be presented in their system, which is pretty cool. And then over here, if you didn't hear all the ruckus, these are the folks out of the Houston area with laser shot that are training apparatus, both for law enforcement, commercial, military applications widely across DoD, with very representative hardware, and they've got some pretty good spotting binoculars over there too. So pretty cool stuff if you want to come see them. All right, so hopefully we're getting this going here on the slides, which was working before. And if not, we'll probably just do some talking here. All right. Well, I'll tell you what we'll do here is we'll just bring up, if we can cycle this, we'll just bring up our first presenter. Can you do this, Stuart? Can you wing it? All right. So we are happy to have here, oh, actually that looks like it might be working. Let me get out of here and try that again. All right. There we go. So from Rochester, UK, not from Texas, we're very happy to have Mr. Stuart Penny. He works in BAE Systems Advanced Display Group, and they put together some pretty high-end goggles, helmets for the Eurofighter Typhoon, wearables built to very exacting military specifications. They've got some really good technology in the pointer and waveguide areas. And so I will turn it over to Stuart Penny here. Please give him a hand of applause.
So thank you, Bo. As you've just heard, I'm here from the UK, where I would argue we've been developing augmented reality for over 60 years. Now, it wasn't called augmented reality then, but a head-up display HUD is effectively about putting useful information into the gaze of the user. So these have developed over the years, become more sophisticated. They can display video, wide area, wide displays. And the latest types of display use the waveguide technology, which is BAE's IP. And waveguides are important because they reduce the volume of the unit. It weighs about a third of what a typical head-up display weighs. And its mean time between failure is measured in thousands of hours rather than hundreds of hours. So what about if you don't want to look just straight ahead, you want to be able to look around you? So that's where helmet-mounted displays come in. So hundreds of thousands of flying hours on these devices. Again, these have developed over the years. We're moving from analog to digital systems. Digital brings with it full color. Full color is important because it improves the usability, it improves people's ability to assimilate the information. So the video there that's looping is an example of what you would see if you were flying a fast jet down a valley in Wales. Now, Wales isn't like Texas. It rains for 365 days a year. It's pretty dark most of the time, and it's quite mountainous, and they like flying at low level through the mountains. So with the colour, colour helps you understand where the other air vehicles are and understands if they're friendly or neutral. Still gives you your attitude, your speed, and your height. But by then using that ability to put an augmented reality into the pilot's field of view helps him not fly into the hills, which is a really bad thing. So not everybody wants to wear a helmet. So last month at an exhibition in London, we revealed our new augmented reality glasses. They're a wide field of view, they're daylight readable, they're comparatively lightweight, and we have a range of head tracking capabilities. Head tracking is important because obviously, as you turn your head, the information needs to move with you. Otherwise, it's not a lot of use. And that's about usability. The lightweight and the daylight readability is about usability, and then they're durable. So, in essence, there's 60 years of experience in providing augmented reality information to users. We've moved from fixed forward-looking to head-worn, but that 60 years gives us lots of experience in the usability, the wearability, and increasingly we're learning about durability, how to make the displays robust so anybody can use them throughout the day. So thank you.
All right, thanks, Stuart. And also, our next presentation is with laser shot simulations. I mentioned just outside of Houston, we've got Scott Schroeder and his team here, and I'll turn it over to them to talk about some of the cool stuff over here to my right, stage left.
Thanks, Bo. I'm Scott. We're from, and this is Matt Freeland. And so laser shots started in a kitchen. Two guys in a kitchen in 1999 working with an Atari machine and working to solve some challenges, training challenges with hunter safety. And so laser shot since 99 has expanded and is into hunter safety, law enforcement, DOD, and entertainment. And really, laser shot is a training company. I mean, we do training and we use technology to enhance our training experiences and the outcomes. And really, Bo gave us some questions to answer, and so I want to try to stay in the spirit of what some of those questions were, and I think our value proposition is we've always been a training-focused company, and so that's what it is. And our discriminator is we have in the industry, I believe, our weapons are superior to anybody else's. Our weapons are so close to having the same true form, fit, and function as what you would find in an infantry squad of any weapons that are out there. And we also have the ability to train a vast array of individual, leader, and collective tasks that are offered. And that's just with a single box. We can do that with a single box. And that system it's portable, it's scalable, so we can increase capacity by tying boxes together. We can increase complexity by networking those systems together into you could run platoon maneuver training with those systems. They're deployable, and based on the ease of use, if it's used in a simple configuration, it doesn't require a contractor to operate it for you. So you can take it anywhere, and that's why I think that laser shot stands out from other companies. Matt?
Yeah, so I want to speak particularly to the AR and VR applications for what we have. As Scott was saying, we were a training company first, and we've been doing this for the last 20 years. We've primarily in that time worked with projected images like we have here, and we use virtual weapons that are mostly laser-based to interface with those projected virtual interfaces, but we've also used virtual reality and augmented reality in the past for specific projects. For example, we have a product called the Aircrewman Virtual Reality Simulator, which was use that weapon right there, which is a simulated M240 machine gun within a virtual Black Hawk cabin to practice air crew gunnery, and used a head-mounted display, so rather than use a laser to track, we were actually using an inertial tracker. And we also did a project for Fort Lewis McChord, where we used virtual headsets to do PTSD immersive therapy stuff. And our weapons, while they're primarily used in a projected environment, we have a open source application or API that can be used so that you can integrate with any kind of VR or AR solution, and you can get sensor data from the weapons. And our philosophy is, as Scott said, it's training first, and so if you want to use a combination of VR with what we bring to the table, we are open to that. And we're moving towards a couple of VR projects ourselves in the future. We're looking at something called Battle Range, which is going to be very similar to our preliminary marksmanship instruction, but using a VR headset. And on the law enforcement side, we're also working on doing a judgmental trainer that, rather than using screens, is done in a VR environment to make it more immersive.
And so some of the things, and I know not everybody is military here, but just the vast array of offerings that we have is, I mean, individual marksmanship, weapon skill development. There's no weapon, almost no weapon that we can't replicate, including opposing forces weapons. We call for fire, so you can call artillery, mortars, CCA or attack aviation, close air support, crew coordination. We have boat trainers, so boat platforms for crew training and judgmental training applications. So that's pretty much, we are all over the world and in DoD.
Thank you.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Thanks.
All right, and our next presentation, I don't know why that just went blank there again. Did we lose somebody? Yeah, we're working on that. Happy to introduce the CEO of Hookbang, like I mentioned, here out of Austin, Texas, Mr. Frank Rowan, 25 years in the gaming industry background, but now a problem solver, some pretty neat custom applications, pretty impressive list of clients on the wall over here. And so I will turn it over to Frank, and you can talk a little bit until we get the slides working. All right, there you go, Frank.
My entire talk is slide-based. All right, as you said, my name is Frank Rowan. I am the CEO of Hookbang. I'm here to talk about machine vision, specifically how machine vision is going to fundamentally change the world as we know it. There's an echo on this mic. Imagine if you're part of a highly trained organization, often works in adverse situations, and one of your subject matter experts is incapacitated. In this case, let's say you're a communications person. It's critical. You're up against the clock. Standard operating procedures aren't working, and it's a medical emergency. In 2019, is this really all we have to work with? We have to go through a manual. What if there's another solution? What if there's an intelligent virtual agent that's been trained as a subject matter expert in the field that you're working in, specifically this hardware, using machine vision, machine learning, and artificial intelligence? It's mobile, it's self-contained, and it fits on a phone. With this system, it'll detect what you're working on and actually give you instructions on what to do. And not only that, synthetically inserts information, and since it's contextually aware, it knows when you complete a step, and more importantly, it knows when you make a mistake. If you're under pressure, that's a 30-step process, and you plug it into the wrong port, like we've all done before, it's going to take you hours to figure that out. That could be catastrophic. So this is the system we've been designing for the last year or so. But one of the fundamental questions on our head has always been trust. If you're in an enterprise environment, and especially in a military environment, you need to be able to trust the system. So how do you validate something like that? It's one thing for it to work in the lab, but in the real world, the conditions are extreme, and especially the edge cases. So for that reason, we designed a hardware platform specifically to ingest, train, and analyze the data. It scales from a small desktop version all the way up to room scale. The system takes the actual object, takes images of the object under every different lighting condition, under every different angle. It annotates these images. It then procedurally analyzes the images and extracts it from the video feed. With that real-world data, we then synthetically augment it. We put shadows on it, we put grass under it, we make it what it looks like under real-world conditions. And we take roughly 10,000 images and extrapolate this to hundreds of thousands of images. We do this because, one, we want real-world data, because we don't have to try and do materials modeling. The real-world lighting and refraction, everything else is very difficult. But secondly, under these extreme conditions, we want to try and fool our system. We want to know when it's going to break. We want to know what lighting it's not going to work under. We run this through an analyzer. Depending on the hardware, it can take days to hours, and it goes through everything. It understands the truth in this, so it understands when it works and understands when it doesn't work. It'll self-train, it'll analyze. If we need to run it through a neural network, it will do that as well. So every iteration we do, we know when it works and when it doesn't work. So we statistically have this information. It's okay if a system doesn't work, but you want to know when it's not going to work. You want to be able to indicate to the operator when it's not going to work. So this is a result of the system that has a very high fidelity. It can go over the system and give you all the information you need without having ever seen the object before. But look, we know it's not perfect. We know things are growing in this field. So we also give you the option of contacting a subject matter expert. You can call them. It's a two-way digital feed, both audio and visual. They can annotate the screen and say, don't worry about this. Here's what you need to focus on. We can save off this information. We can pull off meta tags from the script, and then we have a record how everything works. So then we have an archive too. So not only is there this log of information, it's something we can use to improve the system itself. So this is really the summation. The piece of hardware on the right is not that complicated, but it's still, if you are not familiar with it, it's impossible. Hardware is exponentially increasing. Systems are coming online every minute. Other systems are deprecating. The second you print a manual, it's also out of date. So now we have humans whose entire job it is just to translate information from a printed page that may be totally inadequate to working with that. What we're calling assistive reality. What if you had an intelligent agent that can do this for you and free you up to do the work? And not only is it good for knowledge transfer, but training and support. And this is why HookBang was formed. We formed this 7 years ago with the whole purpose of working on difficult problems we think are going to change the world that we believe in, and finding elegant solutions that can be done now. And we work with a lot of good partners. We did a 2-year research project for Google into augmented mobile reality. We've done a significant amount of work with DARPA, at our previous company and this one, of course with Intel and Warner Brothers. So, and we've been recognized by the industry too for this. So we're in the building, we're self-funded, we're on the 6th floor. If you haven't seen the demo, please come over. If not, come up and say hello. Thank you.
Awesome. All right. Thanks, Frank. And one more presentation here from the folks over here at Quantum Interface to get Jonathan and Joseph up here, and they will talk a little bit about their technology. And let me get you all set up. And there we go.
Thank you. Thank you. Wow. You're right about the echo. So I'm Jonathan Josephson. This is Nabil Chadi. And what we do is we build end-to-end systems using our proprietary new human interface. And when you change the interface, you change everything. You change the way that you can do the workflow, the way the data is interacted with, the virtualization of that data, and how everything works. Our technology is unique, and the differentiator between us and everybody else is we predict user intent in real time. We look at the interactions that happen and break it down to the physics of it and into the vectors of it. By using those vectors, as you begin to interact, we can throw those vectors out, predict what you're going to interact with, and then that causes the content to become intelligent. So we're the only system in the world that not only sees what you're going to do, but causes the content to know it too in real time and become not just AI, which is historical data, but real-time intelligence. So that's what we provide. That's a unique differentiator. By also doing this, we know the user's confidence while they're interacting. So it's not just, did I get the right answer, but how confident was I? I was 20% confident, but I still got the right answer. That's not good enough when you're doing something that really matters. And we get this in real time. Then through our system in the cloud, we actually can cause that data and that content and that media to change, and change itself automatically to adapt to what the user needs to get their confidence up in what they're doing. As far as you're seeing headsets here, we know all the headsets, and if you want to go true hands-free interaction, we use that gaze. Because we use a vector-based approach, we literally create a cursor that floats in the air for gaze-based systems, or when you touch, it's your touch point, or when you use a mouse cursor, when you build it once with our system, we're looking at those hover points, we call them reticle in a head-based system, and then we use that reticle to be able to interact predictably. So there's no more holds, there's no more dwells, there's no more blinks, there's no more gestures, there's no more anything. Our systems are typically 5 to 15 times faster than any other system in the world as well. But more than that, it works the way that the brain works. Our brain works spatially to understand and to remember things and to brand that relationship. If your interface is not spatial, you're not going to take advantage of the way the brain was meant to work. A GUI is a 2D interface. I go to the interface, I do one thing by clicking, and one thing happens. In a spatial world, as I begin to move, forces around me happen, and everything begins to adapt according to my intent. That's what we provide, and that's what we put in systems for today. We have a lot of patents that are granted, and we were Gartner Award winners for the Best New HMI and some other awards. We've worked with a lot of companies and built some prototypes and actual working models. We are the first biopharma direct-to-consumer educational AR application in the world. Is coming out this month. That's our product. We are building an entire system for, let's just say, one of the largest Asian biopharmas in the world to build this through the entire platform of products for drug delivery, marketing, and instructions and training. And for products, I'm going to turn it over to our product guy.
So to follow up on what Jonathan was mentioning, we have two main products. One is a mixed reality system targeting enterprise and the government mainly. And on that, for example, this is a SaaS product that is deployed on the government cloud. So it's ready for all sectors of the government to be used. Our biggest customer is the Air Force, using it for training. And it's a mixed reality system that supports any, once you create the content in our system, it goes on mobile, web, headsets, AR, and VR. The second big product we have is the Biopharma AR system that is launching this month. Globally in 15 countries for instructions on how to use injection devices. To overview the mixed reality system for the government-focused product, we are basically, with all of our experience, noticed that there's a big content creation problem in the field, right? So when you want to do AR, VR, you hit that bottleneck, that first bottleneck, where does the content come from? And we're solving it in a very simple and elegant way. What you could do, you could get any type of cameras, record a situation like a maintenance, an expert fixing a machine or operating a machine, and that content that is easily created could be ported to our system and augmented with instructions. So you take that content, you augment it, and then it can be consumed on any device, and you get a lot of analytics on confidence metrics and usage of that system. To illustrate it better, we wanted to show you how the Air Force is using it in this video.
Quantum Interface has created a proprietary new human interface based on vector analysis of motion. We are using it to build an AR/VR training system where trainers can augment 360-degree videos with instructions, and trainees have a new way to consume that content. Our interface provides new analytics tools for determining the confidence of the user while they are making decisions.
This product is really great because it provides the capability for the student to not only learn, but it assesses their risk management decision-making process. So now they're not only learning the content, but why it's important.
with Quantum Interface, we are able to put a digital overlay on our existing video, and then through that, provide hotspots, provide extra information to not only give more information to the students, but also test their knowledge, test their understanding of the concepts, and really make it more interactive to hopefully increase the ability for them to learn quicker, to learn with a higher retention rate, and to really have that information sink in.
Instead of just learning on the surface level, they're now able to learn on that deeper level and it will stick.
Another thing I really like about Quantum Interface is their ability to be deployed across platforms. So not only 360 video on mobile, but also in augmented reality, virtual reality, etc.
Our system can be applied to training, awareness, logistical, and service environments to make things faster and easier. For more information, contact qi-info@quantuminterface.com.
If you want to see the demo, it's at that table. Come experience it. Thank you.
All right, thanks, guys. We're going to transition to a panel right now, and so if we could have the panelists come up and grab a seat. We are going to give you a little bit of the voice of the customer, as well as the voice of academia and a veteran of the gaming industry. I will introduce the moderator for the panel, Dr. Padraig Maloney out of our BAE Systems Group in Boston, one of our directors and focused on technical scouting of a lot of cool companies. So I'll turn it over to Padraig and let you take it from here.
Thanks, Bo. Appreciate it. Oh, there is a definite echo here. Thanks, everybody. It's great to be back in Texas. I spent 12 years down in Houston working for NASA, and am I communicating with, maybe I'm too close to that microphone. So, great to be back, and thanks to Bo and Gary. So Bo and Gary, if you don't know them, they're program managers and scientists and engineers here with us here in Austin, but we get a small fraction of their time where they work as technology scouts for the broader BA systems. And with regards to technology scouting, as Bo mentioned, our prime thing is to expand the innovation ecosystem that we have access to. Both funding, but also discriminating technologies that we can put into our products and services. And ideally, those are dual-use technologies that venture and other sources of money are interested in. So our focus tonight is on AR and VR. We have a great panel. We're one person down. I think it's our Air Force folks. The Navy is of course here. So a little dig on the Navy there. Anyway, but we have representation from academia, industry. We've got fighter pilots here today. We've got executive producer and director of computer gaming, including the Borderlands game that I've spent a lot of my time on, much to my wife and kids' chagrin. So on the far left here is Aaron Peter Thibault, who's an adjunct professor at Baylor University, and he has thread a consistent path in his career in obviously being in industry as a director with Electronic Arts and now an executive producer and VP of Strategic Operations with Gearbox Software, who are behind Borderlands, which is a multi-billion-dollar franchise. But he also, in his past, he helped create the UT Digital Warrior Training Platform in the earlier part of his career. We've got Captain Tim Hill here, who's the executive officer at the Naval Air Warfare Center of Training. Tim has 1,200 scientists, engineers, and testing and support folks reporting to him, developing training solutions and doing R&D for air, surface, and undersea applications. He's also a experienced naval flight officer with a few thousand hours in F-18s amongst other platforms. I think what I'd like to do is lead off with your thoughts on AR and VR and how it relates to DoD and in terms of transition, in terms of what we can learn, obviously, from the commercial arena. Give us maybe a little overview of what your groups, there's obviously very different focus points, are doing in AR, VR, and then obviously, Tim, for you, how your service is approaching that area. So maybe, Tim, do you want to lead off there?
Sure. Thanks. So NOC TSD, we're over in Orlando, and you might ask to start with what's Orlando doing here. First and foremost, we recognize the innovation in the ecosystem here, and just as we have in our own ecosystem, and we're trying to do a little cross-connecting there, because what the Navy's trying to do is start doing some of the same thing that our sister services have done in harnessing that ecosystem, that innovation into the ecosystem so that we can stay ahead of the adversary, frankly. And the Navy has gone about that in a little more deliberate fashion and has recently started these things that we call tech bridges under the Naval X initiative, because all these initiatives have to have an X in them, I guess. So just a little less than a month ago, our command was designated as one of 5 tech bridges around the country, and they're kind of spread geographically to cover the entire country. And the idea there is that these are places that have innovation ongoing, but we want to connect those ecosystems together so that we can harness all that and spread the good news of what we've got in ours out to one of the others, et cetera. And then by the same token, reach out to places where there isn't a tech bridge, like here in Austin, and understand what's going on and look to do new things that we might have application in what our space is. So then kind of back to your question, then, what is our space? All 4 services have a presence there in Orlando at our base, and they're all working in the training area. So whether you talk about training content or training systems, simulators and that like, that's what we are there for. For us, it's all the naval missions across the entire gamut. So despite the naval aviation in our name and my background being in naval aviation, we do lots of things out there for our submariners, for our surface warriors, for the SEALs, you name it, and such. And I think, as we talk about what AR, VR means to us, I think Bo said it right early on. We're just starting to scratch the surface. I could probably count on both hands the number of systems we've fielded today out there, 2 programs that are, no kidding, applications with AR and VR. And they're, in some cases, a little clunky. In some cases, very limited in what they can do, but they're starting to show us where we can go. A lot of that was a deliberate decision on our part. I always like to use the analogy for those of us that are old enough to remember VHS and beta. We don't want to choose beta and then get left behind. And so we purposefully want to follow a little bit behind what leading edge is so that we don't make that wrong choice. The second part is we want to understand that the technology itself is efficient and effective at delivering the training. Is it a good modality to use? I think most of the folks in the crowd that are any kind of familiar with AR, VR, or anything in between would say that the storybook's been closed on that. It is effective. It's very good because of the immersion you get in the experience. And we all learn better when we've done something than when we've read about it or watched it in a non-interactive manner and such. So I think we've learned that. The place that we're still trying to kind of figure out a little bit is how much of it in a training syllabus is enough. Because certainly putting on a set of goggles or a HoloLens or something of the like creates a bandwidth, a bottleneck in the process and such. So how much is the right amount of that to give someone to get the knowledge transfer that you want there? And so what we've been doing in that is, in our command, we do everything from science and technology, research and development kind of work on the very front end of the problem, all the way out to sustaining devices in the field. So the whole gamut. And what we've been trying to do is then, especially on that far left side of that equation where we're talking about the early development stuff, put some prototypes out in the field, get user feedback, and use that to iterate our way through. And we look forward to partnering with people that want to do that with us. With that, I think I answered all your questions.
You certainly did.
It's a hard act to follow, Aaron.
Any thoughts in particular from the commercial perspective?
Yeah, I think I have a few. First, I'm really jealous that you spent so many hours in the FA-18. I worked on an FA-18 game once with Jane's Combat Simulations. Never actually got to get in one in the air. So that's pretty cool. So Gearbox Software, we make commercial entertainment. We have 2 VR titles that we've produced, one of which was a bundled title with PlayStation. We made Borderlands 2 for PSVR that actually sold quite well. And we also did a collaboration with Penn & Teller. Since our owner's a magician, he has his buddies Penn & Teller. He wanted to see how deep could you go in the immersion of magic, which requires, if you're familiar with close-in magic, a very responsive ability to fool someone in VR, so they have to be really bought in. So we're interested in what are kind of the social dynamics and what is your brain doing in a VR environment. We have thoughts on future VR titles that we might like to do, and if I reach back into some of Gearbox's history and some of my production history, first of all, our first original IP was Brothers in Arms. Brothers in Arms tenets are around authenticity, brotherhood, and immersion, and decision-making in a story-based game following 101st Airborne in World War II. And while it is historical fiction, we mapped out to the foot all of northern France and regions that were invaded, and many different scenarios, and there are actually tours that have been given based on our games, things that occurred in World War II. And we're thinking about how do we project into the future? What is authenticity? What are all those things? Well, maybe we would expand on the notion of the word brotherhood. But what do all those things mean for the future of products in our space? What's authenticity? How do you have the most immersive feel? How do you tell a great story? And how do you feel like you're actually in a situation where you have to make an important decision where your teammates' lives are at risk, your own life is at risk, and there's a larger mission at risk? So those things I think actually map very well to current missions across branches of the military. So you're thinking about training, mission rehearsal, things that you can expose your training, your units to pre-deployment, and also incorporating lessons learned. I'll just quickly bridge there. So you talked about the Digital Warrior platform. I started a program during the lead up to Operation Iraqi Freedom. There was a thing called, so we have different branches here, there was a thing called the Army Battle Command Systems that was getting ready to be fielded, and it required those who were decision makers in the forward operating bases and new digital tactical operation centers to be able to synthesize a lot of information and use it in this new asymmetric situation that they were being put into. And they needed to incorporate lessons learned from units that were going out into the field and things like cordon and search operations and convoy operations, and take those lessons and then apply them in screens that were being produced by the Army, the various layers in Army Battle Command Systems. We had to do very rapid prototyping, maybe take it back to what some of the theme of why we're here today is. We had to do very rapid prototyping that, first of all, was efficacious, around like, are we actually teaching people the right things? Are we going to save lives? We collaborated with AMED at that time, the Army Medical Division, because units were being attached quickly, need to have a broader context for their mission. And that was quite successful. We fielded that at the Battle Command Training Center at Fort Hood. Fast forward to today, I'm still thinking about those same problems. All of that information synthesis, lessons learned being incorporated rapidly for pre-deployment and in deployment, and intro and Delta training through the kinds of stories that we were telling in Brothers in Arms, and that we also tell in our other, maybe more action-heavy, but still role-based, specializations and role-based games.
So, you often work with a production budget that may have some flexibility to it, but what lessons could we learn, and Tim as well, with regards to how do you balance, in our industry and in the DoD kind of related contractor community and with our customers, our customers and ourselves, we always strive to have maybe too many features and the cost rises. And how do you balance like fidelity and reliability with kind of scalability and low cost so that you can actually get these products into as many units as possible with regards to AR and VR? Aaron, I don't know if you want to follow up with that. I mean, lessons learned from the commercial arena.
Sure. It's I don't know how comparable our budgets are in entertainment to, say, DoD prototyping space. But what's cool is that our runtime engines and the editor interfaces that we have now, you can effectively do previs on what the end product will be in a week or two. Now, you won't have all your design depending on the complexity of the software that you want to make. That's pretty fast, right? And you can do that relatively inexpensively with a fairly small team. Now, once you go into the depths of, having multiplayer things working or using, whatever the new equivalent is of your high-level architecture for, doing distributed, federated simulations, things like that. Yeah, okay, that's going to be a bigger integration project. There's going to be more expense to that. But of course, you can emulate a lot of it. So I would think that under a few million or less, you should be able to have something that you've pre-vised, or if you use existing assets, for a lot less. We take the same approach in our commercial software. Even though ultimately a budget on one of our now not in VR, but I would even apply it to our one of our larger AAA titles. We might have a $100 million development budget. I'm not going to spend all that in previs. I'm going to spend less than $1 million if I can, right? So, kind of 1 to 100 ratio.
Yeah, and for us, it's that's the challenge, right? It has always been that we like to, our struggle has always been exactly what you're talking about, striving for perfection, something that exactly duplicates the aircraft, the ship, the submarine, whatever it is, and in a lot of cases with the physical hardware. I think what we've learned with the increase in fidelity of the gaming environments, in particular with what you can do with some of these newer delivery methods, like 3D on a 2D screen, like some of the XR platforms and stuff, that we can get to where we need to get to. Which what is that? It's really about suspension of disbelief. That's what we like to talk a lot about at home. Is enough immersion that you can believe you're in that scenario at that time, so you go and train like you fight. And so to give an example of it, I think there's some folks in the room that are familiar with the ITSEC conference that happens over in Orlando every year. One of the two-star admirals that came down from DC a few years ago, and he hopped in a Formula One racer out there, and he came out and his heart was pounding, he was sweating, clammy hands and everything, and he's like, oh my gosh, how do we bottle that feeling up and put it in the simulator so when I go hop in my F-18 simulator, I'm geared up like that, like I would be if I was really in the fight. And that's what you're really talking about, is how do you get to that level of immersion that will get you there. In some cases, it's fidelity, right? And it's going to be the multi-million-dollar simulator that is a 360 dome and has 6 degrees of freedom motion. In a lot of cases, it doesn't take that, and I think that's what we're starting to learn. Just like you saw in the video that was shown from one of the demos a second ago with Air Force's Pilot Training Next, that for those students that are just learning how to fly, the immersion they're getting in that VR environment is effective to get them ready to go to the airplane and perform at the right level.
Well, is there an element of a feedback loop that you could put into it to actually monitor the student, monitor the customer, if you will, to see if it physically he or she is in the same zone as they would in the real thing?
Yeah, so that's perfect. Some of that's going on. The PTN program used to be right here in town. I think it's transitioned over to San Antonio now, as I understand it. But that's exactly what they were doing. They had data analytics running in the background that looked at the way at which they were performing the tasks, but then also some biofeedback to see, hey, where are you? Is your heart rate elevated a little bit? Are you stressed out? Maybe we need to dial it back so you don't stress out too much and you can learn, or maybe we need to dial it up so you're not going through this like a corpse, right, and whatnot.
And so, with the hardware we have here on the right, reminded that the advent of reliable machine tooling allowed us to have interchangeable parts with our small arms. Is there an equivalent thing with regards to AR and VR where we can avoid having very stacked one-off whole platforms where we can have a lot of interchangeability of software and hardware where we're not wed to HoloLens or some other supplier? We can swap things out. What should we be doing now from either a contractor perspective or a small business or a customer perspective to try and make sure that we have a very nice, really nimble foundation?
I think one of the things we talk about a lot in that regard is today, somebody mentioned content, when we were talking a second ago in some of the presentations. And today, a lot of the content's being developed for 3D on 2D kind of displays because for a lot of our applications, the HoloLens, the different VR headsets aren't quite where we need them to be to go do what we need to do. You know, visual acuity for our air crew, for instance, is a great limitation right now. So what we need to do as we develop product going forward is open architecture to the degree that the content is ready to take it to the next level when the hardware supports that. You know, that's probably the forecasting that I see us needing to do today in that regard.
And Aaron, you've dealt with PS3s and Xbox. What could we draw from that world so that we don't get locked into one environment?
Going back to an earlier comment, today's runtime engines make it a lot easier to go across platform. And 20 years ago, not nearly as easy. People are writing their own drivers. Today, if you're doing that, either something's wrong with you, or you're trying to get something very specific. You know, Unity, VBS, and Unreal all have the ability to target any number of VR and other platforms. It doesn't make commercial sense for those engine developers to not pursue at all speed the ability to keep up with new platforms when they enter the market. And a lot of times they're incentivized to do so as well. Along with that incentivization, it kind of makes sense to follow where the money is going in that, you know, in the hardware space. I think some of the things that we're seeing they're not open platforms, but they give you a lot of flexibility. Obviously, there's the contract that the Army has with HoloLens. But if I look at what Oculus is doing right now, they just had Connect, and I think the ability with their Quest to go from something rendered on PC to something rendered effectively mobily in their Android set gives you a lot of scalability of fidelity and connectivity. Yes, it's in a stovepipe of Oculus, but within that platform, there are a lot of options. I don't know where Microsoft's going with that. I think they're thinking a little more monolithically inside of the HoloLens environment. There had been, I don't know what the state of it is, there was an open VR platform being pushed. I am not aware of anyone developing for or demoing anything on it. Maybe here someone is, but I haven't seen that. I think that academic circles will continue to push it though, unless those platform providers like Oculus and Microsoft start giving more free hardware to schools, let's say. So I think that there will be opportunities in that open VR space. So I would look to probably SIGGRAPH in the next 2 years to see if something real happens there.
So Frank, the CEO of Hookbang, brought up the idea of verification, validation, and trust, and how you generate those edge cases and really prepare for those edge cases. What's, for instance, the Navy doing today to both generate the data, generate the edge cases, and then present them in the appropriate manner to their internal customers?
It's interesting because we spent a couple hours this afternoon with the Hookbang group, and that was, frankly, one of the things we told them is one of the first groups we've come across that addresses directly the trust issue, because that's something we talk a lot about how do you know? It translates back to aircraft experience and that sort of thing. How do you learn to understand when the airplane's telling you something wrong? And I don't know that we have a cohesive vision yet of what we're trying to do to generate trust in that. I know we focus a lot on data integrity when we generate content for training or for any purpose for that matter, and then the configuration management of it, and then protecting the distribution of it out to the field. But in terms of how some of these newer technologies, AI, machine learning, those sort of things play into that, I think we're still at the forefront of trying to figure that out and figure out what the right solution is. But we certainly recognize that that's a big part of it, especially when you bring in artificial intelligence, machine learning, and that aspect to it, where there has to be a trust relationship there.
Aaron, any thoughts there?
I do. One is, and I don't know if this is tangential, but it is around trust in VR, which is when I first put on, and I don't work for Facebook or Oculus, I'm not trying to push their hardware, but I'll tell you, if you've used it and you're familiar with creating the Guardian boundary, now, I was very impressed that when I was getting ready to play the new ILM X Lab Star Wars games in my Quest, I create this Guardian boundary. I play an episode, had fun, put it down. The next day I put the headset back on. It perfectly knew where that boundary was I created. And some things in my environment had changed. So that actually created for me an emotional response of trust for this hardware. And these kinds of things are changing my impression of it and my propensity to be an advocate for it moving forward. It's my attitude, personal attitude, is definitely changing towards it and my ability to trust these platforms to kind of deliver on the promise.
That's actually, I'll jump on there real quick, is that as we've started to field some, in particular, augmented reality solutions to be performance aids, and by that I mean things like, as a maintainer, they're going to put on some device like a HoloLens or take a tablet out to an aircraft, for instance, and try to use that to help them do maintenance and such. The registration of the symbology, the augmented reality overlays, makes a huge difference in the trust factor there, that if you start seeing that there's a displacement between the symbology and reality, and you know enough to know that, then you're instantly going to, hey, this is junk, and throw it down, and you're done at that point. And that's the last thing that we want as we're starting to bring these technologies out into the field.
Excellent. I'd like to open up to the audience if there's a couple of questions.
We were perfect.
Oh, there's one more. Can you talk about the different trends for AR versus VR versus like using just Apple's or Android's augmented reality looking through a device? Instead, they're all three different. I'm just wondering what you get how they compare.
Yes, I'll start on that one. So for us, VR is a tough one for us because we have an infrastructure problem in terms of content and generating all that, pushing that out to the field. The pipes that we have just don't support that very well in general. The space requirements to move around. So, using it for a seated, I'm sitting here, flying my F-18 or whatever, that probably works okay. And it opens up a world for us to put simulators out on the ship and that sort of thing that we have not ever been able to do before. And a lot of goodness there, potentially, when we do that. I think the point you made earlier about being able to use some of the Android, iOS look-through sorts of devices, I think you'll see us go that way in a big way, more so than that middle zone of the AR, because we can look at it from a device standpoint. If I want to use something like, again, I don't work for Amazon, but a Kindle Fire that's dirt cheap and stuff. So now when a sailor breaks that device, I throw it away and get another one. It's that cheap, relatively speaking, compared to a HoloLens or something like that. I think a lot of the reason the Army's going, and I'm not an Army guy, obviously, the Army's going the way they are, is they see the HoloLens conversion as the augmented soldier of the future. And so there's a dual purpose between training, performance aid, and then no kidding battlefield kit out there. I don't know that we've gotten to a place where we believe that's part of our battlefield kit yet. And so I think the lower end of the spectrum has a lot of opportunity for us. And then somewhere in the middle, depending on where the price points get and the ruggedness and all like that the AR may come into play a little bit more. But again, I kind of see it almost bifurcating for us between the very high end for certain applications and the very low end for other things.
I think it's a pretty big question. So cost drivers are a big one. It's funny that now you get a hands-free, pretty good VR headset with visual pass-through for about $400 or $500. That's protecting you in the space that you're in. But it's still kind of minus the foveated rendering that we need to have really comfortable full field of view peripheral vision. I think that on the HCI front for computer interaction, your control scheme, now that we have fingers being tracked using the cameras on the VR set, we're going to start to see much more interesting input methods that are, controllerless, or I think hybrid controller and controllerless. Also, the opportunity to either render on the device or render assisted from a GPU or CPU GPU setup that is tethered I think that's going to be a trend, and that's being introduced as an opportunity for the consumer or the user. I think also there for AR, just on the phone, I'd say on the entertainment side, a lot of people know about like Pokemon Go and these games that have really popularized that along with geolocation. That's not going away. It's morphing into other things. I think it's going to be maybe cyclical as new product releases come around that capture people's attention. Like there's a Harry Potter one, right? So I think on the entertainment side, when those releases come about and the frequency of those releases, we'll start to see product jumping in the way that we do with like free-to-play games. Also on the AR front, we know that better field of view is coming with AR as well. I'm really interested in what we heard about the BAE goggles. I kind of want to see those for myself at some point. But that's definitely been something that's held it back. It's been really nice when I tried out the first HoloLens in business applications. It did a really good job of registering window locations in space as I moved around. And I think now with HoloLens 2, they've done even a better job with inside-out tracking. So so that you don't need the markers in the environment to know where things are. And I think as those two things maybe merge for consumer applications anyway, when you have the sensor-based tracking with better inside-out tracking, you can do things now, imagine yourself kind of in a action game moving through a space where it's okay if you get occluded by the sensors as you go. Right, you can sort of catch up when you get the chance, and then you can expand that out into even like outdoor environments and things where you have different sensors being used to register other people's locations. So I think that notion of where tracking goes is a trend too. I don't know, I could keep going, but that's all I got.
One last question.
What do you think is the hardest thing to train in terms of a pilot? What's the thing that is almost impossible to train? You have to do it over and over in real life to do it.
That's a good question. And frankly, I think so we were just having a conversation the other day back at the office. Decision's been made for MQ-25, our first carrier-based unmanned aerial system, that we're going to fly those with air vehicle operators that are warrant officers. They're going to come straight out of flight school, go out to the ship and pilot these vehicles. And the missions they're going to fly, I'm not doing this because you're sitting there either. It's actually the right answer. So Bo used to be the program manager for the Navy for the program I'm talking about here. So the missions that those guys are going to go do out there, the recovery tanking mission in particular at night, the mission tanking mission, there's a lot of situational awareness that has to come from that, what we call mission commander skills. And it's things that it takes hours and hours and hours of, no kidding, flying. The simulator helps there too, but to build the awareness and the decision-making skills to know, hey, this guy is coming around the pattern and he's going to come around with one pass of gas left in his tank. I need to be over there in the event that he doesn't catch a wire so that I'm there to give him gas if he misses. That takes time to learn that. And so that's the piece, in fact, I challenged our team the other day that we need to make sure we're providing the right support to that program office to provide the right training, not trainers, but training for those guys to learn that and basically get what it took us, 5, 6, 7 years of flying experience to develop in terms of decision making. How are those guys going to be able to have that right out of the box heading out to the ship? How do you develop that? I don't have the answer to it. I'm not the 50-pound brain that can figure that out. We've got a bunch of those guys. In fact, one of them's here with me tonight, and a bunch of them back in Orlando. And so that I think, is the best answer I got to that question.
Well, let's have a round of applause for our panelists. Really appreciate it.
Good job. Great. So thank you very much. We still have a lot of food.
I wish I could
and
just
we've
get
got
my
more
kids to
time
stop
tonight.
landing the drones
So I
on
want
the
to thank
roof.
Frederick and Tim.
That's the hardest thing for me to train.
Enjoy on behalf of the systems. And Thank you very much for coming tonight.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Thanks very much. That's great. Thank you.
Well,